What's up, everybody? I'm Katie.
And I'm Morgan.
And this is For Your Misinformation. We are two Midwestern feminists here to break down the political news that you need to know without the misinformation that you don't.
Let us break down the problem and tell you what we're doing and what you can do to help solve it.
Hi, everybody. We have an episode for you today about the Flint water crisis. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about H.R. 1, the For the People Act, that is going to come before Congress for a vote this week. So I think it's helpful to think of the era that we're living in as a lot like Reconstruction after the Civil War. There was an attempted coup where the government was tried to be overthrown. And it's time for there to be a reckoning with that. And racist white people are super predictable, and what they always do is try to suppress voting rights. So we can get ahead of that, and we can pass the For the People Act. So there's a link in our bio. If you click on that, Indivisible will call you, and it'll put a script right in front of you, and I'll read you the script right now. So they're taking this up this week. Donald Trump's presidency and the attempts to steal the 2020 election have put into focus all the cracks in our democratic system. So the For the People Act is the first bill that Congress is putting forward, signaling that structural democracy reform is number one. It has to happen. The floor is just tilted in favor of the Senate and the Electoral College. The floor is tilted in favor of rural states, Republican-leaning states, white men. We need this reform package, and it does a lot of really, really good stuff. It targets voter suppression. It establishes bipartisan commissions to end gerrymandering so that, in Illinois, Democrats are in control of the entire government. They can gerrymander their districts. Same with Texas. Republicans are in control of their entire state government. They can gerrymander their districts because there's no rule that says that it has to be a bipartisan process. Pretty messed up. It also reforms campaign finance laws and gives more weight to grassroots donors instead of big donations to PACs from corporations and more. So it would be a huge step towards building an equitable democracy. There are more bills coming down the pipe that are also really important, but this one is crucial. It's really the only way to ensure a fair, equitable democracy. Our elected officials need to know where we stand on it. So there's a couple different things that you can do. Oh, and the other reason that this is so important is that when this comes out, it'll be March 1st. There have already been 253 voter suppression bills introduced in state legislatures. It's only March 1st. 253, there was record turnout in the 2020 election. That did not go great for Republicans. They lost control of the Senate. They lost the presidency. And now they're dang, if all of these women and people of color and if it's easy for them to vote, we're going to keep losing. It's yeah, why don't you try making policies popular, that people part of your platform? Maybe then they'll support you. And they're no, we just want to keep doing what we're doing. And that's not how democracy works. So they need to hear from you because racist white people are predictable, and we need to interrupt this shit. So, Capitol Switchboard, the phone number is 202-224-3121. So that'll put you through to your representatives. Or you can click the link in our bio, and that will take you to a link. You enter your address and stuff, and then they call you and they give you a script. Or you can text PGP FDU to 50409, and ResistBot will send a letter to your senators explaining how important this is and how supportive you are of it. All the Democrats in the House support this now. I'm sure there will be people who oppose it, but you should keep in mind, if you hear people talking about this bill, remind them that it addresses voter suppression issues. It provides for automatic voter registration. This is a democracy. We want more people to vote. It expands early voting. It expands mail-in voting, which benefits people who don't have like those typical 9-to-5 lifestyles. And it also authorizes funds to upgrade state voting systems and requires nonpartisan redistricting, like we mentioned. The other crazy thing about this to me is that polling shows that, like, by a wide margin, Americans approve of this bill. They want this. They understand that it's better if more people can vote in a representative democracy. That's the whole point. And that making it easier for people to vote is a good thing, especially because we've seen that there is no increase in voter fraud. That is a big lie being pushed by Donald Trump and a huge chunk of the rest of the Republican Party. So 68% of Americans approve overall of the provisions in this bill. I don't think any Republicans in the Senate are going to support it. I would be surprised. So just keep in mind like how out of touch they are. They also, I think, 0 are going to vote for COVID relief. I don't know anybody who opposes a $1,400 check, which for some reason is not a $2,000 check. Like, Republicans in Congress are so out of touch, and we need to replace them with a political party that doesn't have this like crazy strong authoritarian bent. Okay, so please, 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 please reach out to your elected officials to let them know that they need to vote yes on HR 1. If you want bonus points, it would be awesome if you would post something on your social media about it. Like, you are the expert in your group of friends. They will care if you tell them that they should care. And if you ask them to contact their reps, like, chances are a decent amount of them are going to end up contacting their reps, especially if you explain to them how to use ResistBot. That's like a really easy introduction for newbies. I would love that if you guys would do that. I'm going to try to post some stuff on my personal Instagram, which is at KT_MCWHO, or the For Your Misinformation Instagram. So if you guys don't want to post something yourself, I'll try to put something up that you guys can repost. And then one other thing I hope you take away from this episode is that, like, clean drinking water is a human right. Like, some politicians are working to codify that into law, and some are arguing about unnecessary racist voter suppression laws. I don't know which of those things aligns better with your values, but I know which one aligns better with mine. And a very thoughtful listener in Michigan, Maddie, brought this to our attention, but the Water Act, which stands for the Water Affordability, Transparency, Equity, and Reliability Act of 2021, is also being introduced to Congress this week. So when you're reaching out to them about HR 1, you can also tell them that you want them to support the Water Act. Enjoy the episode.
Hi, Morgan.
Hi, Katie. How are you?
I'm good. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm also fine. Should we, cover the COVID corner right off the bat?
Yeah.
'Cause somebody got their vaccine.
I'm more fine. Because I have been vaccinated. I got vaccinated on February 19th. And the way more exciting part is that morning, my doctor called me and said somebody canceled their appointment and that they thought of their most high need patients, and my mom was the one that they thought of, and asked if I could bring my mom with me when I went in. And I was like, of course I can, and kind of started crying. And yeah, so my mom and I both got vaccinated on the 19th, and then we'll get our second Moderna shot 1 month later, 4 weeks later.
Some doctors are truly the best.
Yeah. Well, so I feel like I should be totally open about that, because I know a lot of people are having, I go to a couple Indivisible meetings a week in the evenings, and all I hear is about how hard of a time people are having finding vaccines, even people who are eligible, you know? And it's I want to be able to help them and explain how I got it, but the only way that my mom and I were prioritized is because my mom's sister, my aunt, pays for us to have a concierge doctor, which is like a really fancy doctor who they're very expensive. So like, thank God for her, but also it's just like, oh yeah, that's a pretty inequitable system. But yeah, but I mean, it got me and my mom vaccinated, so we're super thankful. And I have been like, I don't know if you've noticed, I've been like a different person since that happened almost. Like I can like see into the future now. Like I'm like, oh yeah, there is a future. I don't have to be like terrified that like at any moment, like if you're vaccinated, I mean, I've only gotten the first shot, but like that provides, pretty good coverage. Like I don't have to be super concerned about mom being hospitalized, or like nobody who gets the vaccine even gets it so bad that they're hospitalized, or almost nobody. So I don't know, it's just such a huge weight off my shoulders. So yeah, I like look into the future now. I'm like, well, what should we do next week? It's crazy. But yeah. So that is, maybe we should have like ended with that, because that's like the only good news. The bad news is that more than 500,000, no, sorry. Yes, that's right.
500,000.
500,000 Americans have died. I think February 6th last year was the first day that a COVID case was identified in the United States, maybe something like that. I guess I probably should have looked this up. But anyway, it's been about a year. 500,000 people died, which is nuts. Died already. Although rates are going down. Like shit's working. Like good job, everybody. Whatever you're doing is nailing it. Okay. Except you have some news.
Womp womp. Womp, yeah. Womp. So like my family, we're all very close. They all live very close by one another, and
by Iowa standards.
Yes, by Iowa standards. And are kind of being their own little bubble, right? So my mom will babysit my nieces, my dad, and both my brothers-in-law, and one of my sisters still has to work outside of the home for their jobs. One of my brothers-in-law was able to get vaccinated already. Well, anyway, my dad got COVID. I mean, probably from someone at work, although it could have been, somebody in the family who was asymptomatic. You don't know for sure.
Yeah. But like, he
works in a factory.
Let's guess he works in a factory, and COVID Kim Reynolds, the governor, hasn't imposed any mask mandates. So like he works with people who don't wear masks, right? And is there anything that like he could even do about that?
Also, I believe that just based on, everyone got COVID. My dad got COVID. My mom got COVID. Both my sisters got COVID. My unvaccinated brother-in-law
right now.
got COVID. Yes, currently have COVID.
Scary.
Even the kids. So like literally everyone in the bubble that is my family got COVID, except for, thank God, my grandpa, who is an old man with diabetes, and my aunt, who has a congenital heart condition, did not. And partly because everybody is super, super, super careful to
around them,
wash hands, wear masks, everything, anytime they're around them. And also because they avoid, seeing them, especially in like indoor settings and stuff. Right. And it's been stupid cold and in Iowa. So, there just hasn't been a lot of interaction. But yeah, currently everyone has COVID, and it sucks and was really scary. Everybody's doing okay.
Yeah.
My dad, the first one to get sick, is recovering well. So we're very lucky. But based on their symptoms, it is apparent that it's one of the new variants that they're sick with.
I didn't know that.
Symptoms were a little bit different. So probably that's why they got sick, and why they all got sick, and how they got sick is they think that the new variants are more likely to be spread through like fomites, which are like, the germs that you leave behind on surfaces and things. So yeah, just that little reminder that especially with the variants, people continue with the masks, but also like wash your hands and all of that. So I'm very happy. My family were so lucky that it took this long before the bubble, got COVID. I live a couple hours away, so I wasn't around them in order to also catch COVID. We're very lucky it took this long and that nobody got super sick or was hospitalized. And I recognize that, but it's still really scary. And everybody felt really crappy. Like if you've ever had influenza and you spend like a whole week feeling like death, it's kind of like that. Also, not being able to taste or smell doesn't sound fun.
No.
So, I mean, even if that's like the lightest symptom, continue to take this seriously so we can still see the numbers trending downward.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good night.
I was trying to find COVID rates in Iowa because I know, I mean, a little while back, like Illinois was trending really, really, really poorly. We're doing a lot better now. And I think our rates in Illinois as a state are down to like 2.8% positivity rate. And then in Chicago, I think it's like 3% or like 3.2% or something like that, which is so much better than it was a little while ago. But I would be so curious to know what Iowa's are. Do you know what they are right now?
Off the top of my head, no. Last Friday, I remember looking and the rates were, I mean, some of the lowest that it's been, but in a map where you were comparing the positivity rates of all the states, Iowa was the worst. Like literally there was a map of the US and all the states were a color to correspond with the positivity rate. And Iowa was like this dark red dot in the middle of the country, which was mostly like shades of pink.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's not shocking.
Right. And like, I know we harp on this a lot, but like it did not have to be this way. We just had like
there are terrible public health disasters that are preventable. Is this
right?
A segue?
Actually, it wasn't, but you did a great job. Yes. So every terrible public health disaster goes the same way. So we're gonna talk about a classic one today, which is the Flint water crisis. But I'm sure you'll notice some themes, a lack of transparency, a lack of accountability, some racism, some environmental racism, segregation. It played a big part, maybe got a little bit of white savior shit going on. It's got a little bit of everything. And it also corresponds really well with some environmental injustice that's happening in Chicago right now with General Iron, which I'll talk to you guys about in a little bit. But basically, General Iron has a plant in Lincoln Park, and all the rich people in Lincoln Park were like, we don't want you here. And they were like, okay, fine. So they applied for a permit to open a new factory on the southeast side of Chicago, which is historically underserved. I mean, it's the same thing with Flint, but like that's the area where people of color were segregated to, basically. So like that's where all the environmental racism happens, because like the rich people are like, well, we don't want this in our backyard, like why don't you move it somewhere else? And it's like, oh, we just happen to be moving it to a place that's 60% Latinx and 25% black. It's just a coincidence. So
yeah, and then we'll just choose not to regulate it either and allow,
or like just ignore the regulations completely and pay the fine because it's easier that way, and not give a shit that means that like babies have, like, there's no level of lead. There's no lead levels that is safe.
Nope. Oh, we'll get to it.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me, Morgan, tell me what's happened with the Flint water crisis.
Oh, the Flint water crisis. What happened and why are we talking about it 5 years later? Well, Flint, Michigan, it's situated on the Flint River, which flows right through the center of the city. For over 100 years, the river has been a dumping site for everything from like the car factories to meatpacking plants, lumber mills, because, the U.S. is historically really good at destroying, ecosystems. Also raw sewage from the city's waste treatment plants. Yummy. Agricultural runoff, urban runoff, and toxic waste from the actual landfills, because there are actual landfills. They're not just the river. So yeah, Flint is the birthplace of General Motors, and was at one point a booming industry town. And then in the 1980s, when Reaganomics tanked the economy, the plants closed. The workers left town, and so now Flint is a town of about 100,000 people. the majority of whom are Black, and about 45% of Flint residents live below the poverty line. And, that's a lot. And when we say 45% live below the poverty line, that means that a significant number in addition to that also still isn't going to be able to afford basic necessities. The poverty line is not always a good measure of like how many poor people there actually are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nearly 1 in 6 of the like homes in Flint has been abandoned. So
Wow.
that's usually a really good indicator that economically things aren't going well. So in 2011, Flint was in, like millions of dollars worth of financial deficit and fell under state control. The then governor, Rick Snyder, appointed an emergency manager to set policies and to cut costs in the city. So this was an appointed position by the governor who now had control over the city, not an elected position.
Totally an undemocratic process as fuck. Undemocratic as fuck, which results in a huge crisis. Like,
yeah,
this is where it starts with putting somebody who like isn't accountable to the people of Flint in charge to like. This is the like white savior part I was talking about.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know if that
this
actually counts, but it's like
position.
Yeah, it's basically like these Black residents, they don't know what's good for them. Like, we'll appoint this emergency manager and and it's just like, that is so disrespectful. So just recognize shit like that when it comes along.
Yeah, shit like that needs to be called out. So one of these tactics for cutting costs was to switch the city's water supply from Detroit's system.
Like Huron, I think.
Yep. And start pumping water from the Flint River until they could build a new pipeline from Lake Huron.
Which I don't know how much you guys know about water quality, but getting water from a river is... rivers are shittier. Like, they're not as pure. They're harder to purify or whatever, make drinkable, like make potable. So that was like step one in a not great direction.
Like, this was a poor decision rooted in systemic racism and a deep, deep misunderstanding of science and public health. Again, like we say, all decisions should have a public health consultant on them, and then we could avoid things like this.
Yeah.
Anyway, improper testing and improper treatment of the water being pumped from the Flint River led to an unsurprising series of events that were ignored by government officials for 18 months.
Classic.
Emphasis there on the word ignored. The people of Flint brought these water problems to city officials and to the governor's office. They held protests. They made sure that the people responsible were aware of this problem. The people responsible just didn't care.
Can I interject right now? That's what's going on with General Iron right now. Like, people are trying to get Mayor Lightfoot's attention. And like, I want to point out also that like she and Andrew Cuomo have like similar temperaments. They're Democrats, but they don't really have the temperaments to be leaders, or at least not like mayors or anything like that. But yeah, I don't really think they have the temperament to be elected officials at all, because like they're very like vindictive, and it just doesn't seem like they like really care what experts think, which again is very dangerous. But she hasn't really acknowledged it yet. She has to sign off on the permit, and I think the Chicago Department of Public Health or something like that has to sign off on the permit to let General Iron move, who notoriously does not adhere to environmental regulations. They just pay the fines. So like, that's a danger to the people who live there. They've been trying to get Mayor Lightfoot's attention, and she hasn't really been, I don't think she said anything about it. And there's actually hunger strikers now. So like, this is So this is an environmental crisis that's happening in Chicago right now. I'll put the links in the bio. So there's a petition to sign, and there's also a phone number where you can leave a message for Mayor Lightfoot about it. But like, these things are gonna keep happening. That they're not going anywhere. We're talking about Flint because like it's an iconic example, but like it happens all the time everywhere. It's we're living through history right now, and it's happening. Like a future public health class is going to learn about general iron and how like either like people let it happen or like just everybody was like, no, fuck this. Like you cannot keep just like moving industrial polluters into communities of color and think you're going to get away with it. Like we know what environmental racism looks like now. So that's my interjection.
Yep. Yeah. So the complaints that the people of Flint were bringing to those responsible included that the water smelled putrid, was discolored, and if you've seen the images, you know this water looked disgusting, and was bad tasting, in addition to causing skin rashes, hair loss, and itchy skin, which now I'm itchy.
Yeah.
Like, not to mention that once they actually measured the levels of lead in the water, they found that there was almost a tripling in some neighborhoods, a tripling of high lead levels in young children. Lead exposure in children, for those who do not know, can result in damage to the brain and nervous system, delayed growth and development, learning and behavioral problems, hearing problems, speech problems. There is no such thing as a safe level of lead exposure in small children. Therefore, exposing small children and entire communities to any lead exposure, especially this amount, should be and is criminal.
Yeah.
Criminal. One pediatrician has, in fact, actually phrased it as lead is one of the most damning things you can do to a child in their entire life course trajectory. In Flint, nearly 9,000 children were supplied lead-contaminated water. 9,000. And so, keep in mind, like, this went on for 18 months. That is
showering, cooking, drinking
time.
Water with a neurotoxin in it.
Yeah.
Children.
And people were calling this to attention. It wasn't like this went unnoticed for 18 months. The people were calling attention to this issue.
Or trying to.
Right.
Like,
and
I think one woman like brought a bottle full of water, like brown water, like from her sink to a city council. Maybe you were going to talk about this.
Yeah,
Sorry.
No, they did. The people did. They brought the water
and
to the council
the people
meeting.
just dismissed her. They were like, that can't be right. And it's just like, it's infuriating.
Yeah, it is. They tried to just, when they couldn't ignore people's complaints, they just tried to gaslight them into thinking that this wasn't a real problem. And lead wasn't the only problem either. The switch to pumping people's drinking water from the Flint River also led to an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease, which is like a really bad form of pneumonia you don't want. It killed 12 people. 12 people died from Legionnaire's disease, and at least like 87 people were confirmed ill.
Yeah, it does not sound like a fun thing to have. Do you remember we had an old coworker who was a bit of a hypochondriac? Did you know that she was kind of obsessed with Legionnaire's disease?
Yes, I heard her say Legionnaire's disease so many times.
She would not drink from our water fountains because of it.
She was very obsessed with it.
Yes, she's a little bit of a hypochondriac. But yeah, so that I learned about Legionnaire's disease in grad school because I remember having to like track some diseases in the United States. And there were some Legionnaire's outbreaks.
Yeah, this was the biggest Legionnaire's outbreak.
Yeah, so like it happens.
US.
Yep. It definitely happens.
Yeah. There was also fecal coliform bacteria in the water, probably as a result of the city's failure to maintain enough chlorine in the water. And so when they're not chlorinating the water mains, it's not disinfecting the water. And so then you have like fecal poop bacteria, poop germs in the water. But don't worry. They corrected this problem by adding more chlorine, but without addressing the underlying issues. FYI, folks, water quality and the science that goes into it is not just like as simple as like, oh, there's bacteria, add some bleach and kill it. It's not how it goes. So instead, then they just ended up with really high levels of trihalomethanes or methananes, which cause cancer. So they were like, oh no, we're infecting people with poop. I know. Let's give them cancer instead.
Yeah,
That'll
people hate
fix
poop,
it.
love
Nobody
cancer.
Likes poop. Cancer.
They'd rather, yeah. A little bit of a humble brag. Not really. I got ghosted by the guy who is in charge of Bloomington's water reclamation. So no big deal, but it's a little bit bigger than the size of Flint, I think. Okay, anyway, that's a true story, though.
Yeah. So we love people taking action here at FYMI Pod. So let's mention that the people who, faced the failure of the agencies that existed to protect them then came together and demanded that the government do its job, which is what we are here to do. Mm-hmm. So residents joined forces with the NRDC and other groups to petition the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, to launch an immediate emergency federal response to the disaster. And the EPA was like, merp. So in 2016, a coalition of citizens and groups, including one notable resident, Melissa Mays. There were so many notable residents, though, so I'm not going to name all of them. Great people in Flint. Mm-hmm. And a local group, Concerned Pastors for Social Action, the ACLU of Michigan. A bunch of people actually sued the city and state officials in order to try to secure safe water for Flint residents. And in this lawsuit, they demanded proper testing and treatment of water for lead and replacement of all of the lead pipes in the city, and that all, capital all residents, not just those with means, would have access to safe drinking water through a bottled water delivery system or through filter installation and filter maintenance programs.
Yeah.
That's the kind of activism we're talking about. People aren't left out because they're disabled, because they're old, because they're children who have no agency, because they're poor or working class. Like, this was such a great example in organizing. Should it have happened in the first place? No. Mm-hmm. Did the people kick ass to make sure that there was change? Yes. So finally, in November of 2016, a federal judge sided with the residents of Flint and ordered the implementation of door-to-door delivery of bottled water to every home that did not already have a properly installed and maintained faucet filter. Yay. And then that following spring, there was a major settlement required by the city to replace thousands of lead pipes, using funding from the state of Michigan, and then guaranteed even further funding for comprehensive tap water testing, for faucet filter installation, and for education programs, also for free bottled water through the entire following summer, and then continued health programs to help residents deal with the residual effects of Flint's tainted water, such as, exposing 9,000 children to neurotoxins through drinking water for 18 months.
I remember the first time I learned about something like this. It was not Flint. It was somewhere else, perhaps West Virginia. I don't remember. But I remember just thinking, like, well, why don't they move? I was probably like 18 or 19 in this class. I think it was like a community health education class. But yeah, I was just like kind of thought to myself, like, well, why don't they just move? And it's like, oh, that's a rich white girl, like a girl who was raised in like a middle class family's way of thinking. Like, we would have just moved, but like that is not an option that is available to everybody. So don't feel bad if like you had that thought, but that's like an incredible privilege to have the means to move if something like this happens to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So. And, and then to the point that, like, people shouldn't have to.
Right.
Okay. So does Flint have clean water now? Sort of. So at this point, the lead levels in Flint are better than many other Michigan cities. And Michigan now has the toughest drinking water standards in the country. They require vigorous testing for all municipalities. And so, I mean, that means something good did come out of this, but that doesn't mean there are not still problems in Flint. The city did switch back to the Detroit water system, but the damage was already done. The city still had lead service lines, so there was still lead going into the residents' water supply. They've been working on inspecting and replacing those service lines for the past 5 years, which is good. But until all of that work is finished, residents are supposed to keep using the filters provided by the government. The bottled water distribution did stop. Citizens still have, and groups still have, people out there delivering bottled water, but the state and the city no longer provide it to people. Fun public health fact, it is recommended that people use water filters anywhere, not just in Flint, Michigan, that they may have lead pipes. And there are still lead pipes in a whole bunch of U.S. cities, especially in low-income areas, because fuck the pores, am I right?
Yeah. People are always talking about... Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, they're always talking about infrastructure, like improvements to infrastructure and how we need to make improvements to infrastructure. This is that's some of that. We haven't been making infrastructure improvements in a long time. This is not going to be like a Flint-specific problem. Like stuff like this is going to be popping up everywhere.
Yep. A lot of the infrastructure in the United States was built like 70 years ago.
Yeah.
And made to last
Look
about 50 years. What are you doing, Peaches?
What is she doing?
So
so sparkly.
A lot of the infrastructure is failing now because it wasn't built to last this long.
You took Bloomington 101 too, right?
I did.
Okay, so do you remember the like water reclamation plant and like how and not just that, but like public works. That was one of the most
so interesting.
But how they were talking about how like the sewage systems and the like drain water and all like all of that is really like on its last legs kind of.
And if there's you're a homeowner and you don't actually own
oh my god
the pipes under your home or in front of your home and they break down, you fucked.
Yeah so
because your insurance won't cover it and the city doesn't have to.
Yeah, the person in charge of public works like made it very clear that like there's no funding on its way, or at least wasn't when I took that class, which was like 3 years ago or whatever, but like there was no oh my gosh, Peaches is hiding, she's playing hide and seek. Oh hi, bye. Yeah, that there wasn't any, I don't know. I mean, I think the Green New Deal would be like an incredible infrastructure project. I don't know if it would have to do with, it probably would involve, I don't know, maybe not.
Well,
but anyway.
It's like people like tout like the WPA and stuff that happened like the public, after the Great Depression, and that pulled America back up and that was so great for infrastructure and communities and employment, and it gave people jobs and all of these kinds of things. And if we did that now, which is like a Green New Deal type thing, people would be so mad and they'd be like, no, it's socialism. It just
that's what and like we have to do that, so we have to make that popular, like right now, like, and for years and years, like the oil and gas industry has been gaslighting us into believing that that climate change isn't real. And like now Americans exist in like two completely different realities. And like the biggest challenge I think of our time is going to get people like to understand that they've been lied to, and to like just make people understand that, like, make popular like what needs to happen, and what needs to happen is like a Green New Deal and some infrastructure improvements,
Yep. And so if you are unsure or you're wondering if like you and your home may possibly have lead pipes, like make sure you find out if you have lead lines in your city.
How do you find out?
That's your self-care assignment. I would just Google it. At one
Do
point,
you have lead pipes?
I don't, but I live in like a new development in like a little suburb. So I'm all right in my area. But at one point, NPR, after everything happened with Flint, at one point NPR had like a link for it, but that was a couple years ago, so I don't know if they still do. But yeah, I would just try to Google it, try to find out. Contact your city. Otherwise, like there are definitely ways you can find out. That's your self-care assignment, everyone.
Are you drinking neurotoxin?
Yeah. What's the lead content in your water? Fun game. Yeah, so unsurprisingly, many of Flint's residents don't drink the water there. They won't. Even though government officials and other institutions have told them it's safe, like they won't drink it. And can you blame them? Local and federal officials repeatedly denied that there was nothing wrong with the water. They tried to gaslight the residents of Flint, who knew there was something wrong with the water because, may I remind you, it smelled bad, it tasted bad, it looked bad, it made their skin itch and their hair fall out. Like, ew, of course, like, yuck. Anyway, yeah, there's a long, long history of public health guilty of it, city officials, federal officials, a whole bunch of white people. There's a long history of white people manipulating test results, lying, hiding the facts, and overall just like ignoring and or intentionally harming BIPOC people in this country, which causes a valid distrust of authority. I mean, Tuskegee experiment, anyone.
Yep. Henrietta Lacks stuff.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, as of our recording date, which is we're recording this late February 2021, in January, some charges were brought to try to hold the people responsible for the disaster in Flint accountable for what they did.
That's
the
extremely my shit. Sorry, go ahead.
I know, right? I'm like,
So
this is my kink
yeah.
right here. Yeah.
Because otherwise, if they don't, like, how does anybody in the future get deterred from it?
Well,
like,
and that's exactly, like, this isn't shaming. This isn't punishing.
It's not cancel culture.
Accountability. Yes. Right. It's not cancel culture. This is
he poisoned 9,000 kids. Governor Rick Snyder's not being canceled. He's being held accountable.
Exactly. So, yeah, Rick Snyder faces 2 misdemeanor charges for willful neglect of duty, and then there are 8 other officials facing charges ranging from perjury to involuntary manslaughter. So a lot of these are felony charges which carry years in prison, thousands of dollars of fines. Reading all of their names and the specific charges against them isn't good podcasting, but like you can read that online if you're interested in the specific charges. A quote from the prosecutor, Kim Worthy, is this case has nothing to do with partisanship. It has to do with human decency, resurrecting the complete abandonment of the people of Flint, and finally, holding people accountable for the unspeakable alleged atrocities that harmed this city for years. Pure and simple, this case is about justice, truth, accountability, poisoned children, lost lives, shattered families that are still not whole, and simply giving a damn about all of humanity. Snaps for Kim Worthy.
Yes. I want to be her friend.
Right? Yeah. So
that was great.
But like, what actions can you take, right? We love actions here. You can still make donations. People are still making water donations to the Flint residents who don't feel safe drinking the water. Or right now, if water is your thing, there are still people in Texas who need clean water after all of the failed infrastructure happening there. So, that's also kind of why this Flint episode is timely, because like a week ago, everything in Texas exploded.
Yeah.
Also, check the water quality where you live. Find out what groups are advocating for clean water where you live, because there probably is someone. So I live in Iowa. A lot of people don't realize how bad the water quality actually is in this state. It's not good. The Clean Water for All campaign can be a good place to start. But if you've got internet, you can just Google and find out. You can also contact your, local like government, your city council, your local public health. If you want to try to get on board with water advocacy, there's also often volunteer opportunities. So I signed up to volunteer with the Polk County Conservation. That's the county that I live in Iowa, and they have some different projects with water. So there's lots of ways to get involved if you're like, oh yeah, water health, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I give the number for the general iron thing?
Yes, I was going to ask you if you had any actions for that.
So there is a petition that I'll put in our link tree, but there's also, I'll give just like a better summary than the one I gave before, and give the number for the 2 people that people can call to say that they're not cool with environmental racism anymore. But basically, and this is not so much a water issue as it is an air pollution issue, but everything's everything. So it's basically just like, how do you decide which communities deserve breathable air and which ones don't? But so General Iron is a scrap metal shredder, and they're an industrial polluter. They're notorious for violating environmental regulations. And after receiving demands from the people of, where do they live? Oh, Lincoln Park live. Where do they exist? Lincoln Park. So the people in Lincoln Park, who are historically better well off than the people on the southeast side, they were like, you can't be here anymore. Like, you need to relocate. And then so the company applied for a permit to move from Lincoln Park to the southeast side. And that is, the southeast side is due to like redlining and segregation, where most people of color historically have been like relegated to. And that is where a lot of the it's the like industrial corridor basically of Chicago, is like, it's where people are allowed to pollute basically, because there aren't people with like money and power around to advocate for what they need. So that's, the southeast side already suffers from environmental and health disparities due to a history of racial segregation, and this is just like a textbook example of environmental racism. Like I said, the southeast side is 60% Latinx and 25% Black. So you can call the mayor's office, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, and you can also call the Department of Public Health to demand that they deny the permit to General Iron and stop this harmful cycle of environmental racism on the southeast side. So the number for the mayor is 312-744-3300. And the Dave Graham is the assistant commissioner of the Chicago Department of Public Health, so he should know better. And his number is 312-745-4034. So if you feel like doing some advocating for communities that historically have not been advocated for, we would sure appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, if you take anything away from today's episode in relation to Flint and just environmental activism really in general, from a local perspective, remember that the reason Flint, Michigan is not still killing people with their water is because of the people of Flint, Michigan, because of your average Flint resident with support of doctors, scientists, journalists, and activists.
But they decided they deserved better.
The people were relentless in advocating on their own behalf and calling out the reckless and racist mismanagement of the city and state officials. This never should have happened. This was 100% preventable, but it's the people who are the reason it is not still happening. And that is an important thing to remember.
Yeah, because they want you to feel like there isn't, that it's like it's an insurmountable task, but it's not. They want you to feel that way so that you are discouraged and you don't take action. But it's like a sham, basically. It's like all it takes is enough pushback, enough. So,
yeah. So,
let's be that.
We're nominating Assholes of the Week. Obviously, it's Rick Snyder and all of the officials who allowed this to go on in Flint, Michigan, if that wasn't already obvious.
Yeah. Rick Snyder and General Iron are assholes.
General Iron is also the asshole of the week. So
a current asshole of the week. Although Sure
And
hope Rick Snyder faces some consequences.
and Ted Cruz per the usual.
Always.
Ted Cruz is the perpetual asshole of the week.
He is. Do you follow Liz Plank on Instagram?
Huh?
Did you see what she posted about how like Ted Cruz and what AOC did for Texas is just like the perfect textbook example of like mediocre white men and then like women of color needing to like come save their asses. Yeah. So if you don't know, AOC raised $5+ million for the people of Texas while Ted Cruz got on an airplane to Cancun because his wife was cold. So
Didn't even bring his dog.
So just like those are, I think people a lot, and not you guys, because you guys are bothering to listen to this podcast, but the people who are not swayed, who like want to stay in the middle, who are like, well, there's bad politicians on both sides. Fine. But you can discern which ones are in it for the right reasons and which ones are not. And I think you can tell who cares about their constituents more. And also, like, it's because AOC was like a real person. She had student loan debt, probably has student loan debt. She has to pay 2 rents. Like, well, that's not a normal thing, but that's because she lives in DC and New York. But like, she understands what it's like to have your like water shut off or whatever.
Loan debt. So if there's any like sugar daddies listening, or sugar mommies,
yeah, we don't.
For that matter, I don't know if that's a thing. I've never heard that term, but
that's definitely a thing.
It's got to be a thing.
Yeah,
I'll even send you like pictures of my feet or something in return. I'm just
yeah, whatever it is.
Just saying, Katie and I are also both very normal people.
Yeah, elect us. I don't know. Elect Morgan.
Pick us. Choose us. Love us.
What's that from?
Grey's Anatomy.
I see. What have you been doing to take care of yourself lately?
All right, look. So the polar vortex finally left Iowa, and it was warm enough to wear shorts.
Very nice.
Yeah, it was in the 40s Fahrenheit.
Wow.
Obviously, but want to clarify for our Canadian friends. Yeah, so it's been great. I've gotten to go exercise outside in shorts, and it's been wonderful.
I bet that's been good for your like mental health.
It has been, and that's what like for me like self-care is getting some physical activity because I'm a much less destructive human when I am exhausting myself. Also, all of the feral cats that I take care of made it through the cold snap, and that made me happy that they all made it through.
They're little survivors.
Yeah, they're so tough. I've even gotten to pet a couple of them now.
Yay.
So I'd say things are getting pretty serious.
That's really fun.
Yeah. What about you? What's your self-care? How you doing?
Well, I've felt much different ever since I got vaccinated I guess I should also, so I got the Moderna vaccine. My arm did hurt like worse, not for very long, like maybe for like 24 or 36 hours, but like that for that duration, like my arm really, really hurt. And it made me exhausted. I think that's what it was. But like as soon as I got home from the appointment, I took like a 3-hour nap. I just like collapsed in bed. And a couple times while I was sleeping, I did wake up with like some chills, nothing like crazy. And that was it. Those were the side effects that I experienced. Was it you who told me that the second dose of Moderna, people usually react worse to?
Yeah, people have a stronger reaction usually to the second dose. Not everybody, but
I'll be on the lookout. I'll let you guys know.
So yeah, just make sure you when you all get your vaccines, make sure you plan on coming home and taking a nap.
Yeah. Block out 3 hours for a nap.
It's never a bad time to block out 3 hours for a nap.
No.
So.
But ever since I got vaccinated, like I said, I've been able to I see into the future. Not in like a I wish I was like not in like a time traveling way. In like a
but that would be great.
I know. In like I would like to, like, I look at my calendar before bed to see what my day tomorrow looks like. And, like, I have, like, a calendar for the next month to know what the next month looks like. Because it's like, oh, it's not the same. Like, there's hope. now, I guess, sort of. And I don't have to have this like constant fear. So I've been like exercising and doing my physical therapy, and just like in general taking like better physical care of myself, you know, not eating like an entire number 9 from McDonald's when I feel sad. You know, maybe trying like maybe taking a shower with some essential oils, or you know, doing some yoga instead. So I hope I told Clark, I was like, I've been feeling so much more like myself. And then like when you're a depressed person, or when you're a person who has depression, I'm always just like, oh, when is this gonna stop? Like, how long do I have where I'm gonna feel like myself before I go back to like being like a functioning but like depressed person? And I hope I don't go back, but I do hate that feeling where it's just like, yeah, I feel good, but I'm like overclouded. I'm like, oh, it's overshadowed by this feeling that like, I don't know how long this is going to last. So I guess I should probably make the most of it. But I don't know. I've been feeling really good lately.
Yay.
Except for, so we still have the foster kitten. This is the worst part of my life. So he likes to pee in my room. He's mostly stopped, but basically we had to put a litter box outside of my room, which is not ideal because it's like crunchy and gross and like, but it did stop him for the most part from peeing in my room. But he still has diarrhea. He's had diarrhea since we got him. Don't even know how long it's been anymore. Lost track of time. But he's been through like 2 rounds of deworming and like a diarrhea medicine. So I got to scoop up a diarrhea fecal sample with a disposable spoon to put it into a little baggie so we could send it off to the lab to see what the fuck is wrong with him and why he poops so much.
Are they going to do allergy testing? Because I know a couple of cats who are allergic to chicken, and that ends up being in a lot of cat foods.
How do you every time I have an issue, you know everything. But I don't know if they're going to do that, but I would be curious. I do know, I can't remember what it is, but he is very partial to like a certain kind of wet food, and like he won't eat, like I think he's had turkey and chicken and he will only eat one of them. So I wonder if he's allergic to, I don't know.
It could be something like that.
Interesting.
I hope it's something like that, because that would be such a simple fix compared to like, oh, this kitten has ulcerative colitis.
Well, I feel like I had another cat that had like Giardia, which I think is like a parasite. So I think there's like other things that it could, like, we'll see. I get to call tomorrow and figure out what is wrong with him.
Okay, so stay tuned, everyone, because once we find out what's wrong and his kitten gets fixed up, he can get adopted. And the way it's sounding right now, no listener's going to adopt this cat.
No, and it's okay. I wouldn't like put this on you guys. I'll let you know the next time I have a good batch of kittens. This one is fine. He's recovering from ringworm. He's got some little gross scabbies like on his forehead and on his arms and stuff, but they're healing. So that is why he couldn't get neutered. So I'm hoping that like now that he's healing, we can get him neutered so that we can get him moved on to his next phase in his forever home with hopefully somebody who likes his weird quirks, like peeing on scales, you know. Yeah. And it'll be fine. You know, they can't all be peaches and hazel.
This is true.
It's just they can't.
All right. Well, everybody, have a good week.
Will you feed your guinea pigs so we can hear them go squeak, 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 please?
I will try my hardest.
All right, we're gonna try to get you guys some guinea pig squeaks, but I guess we'll talk to you next week. And in the meantime, stay sexy.
And don't forget to advocate for clean water for everywhere. That sounded dumb, but I don't care. Clean water is important. I'm tired. I'm going to see if I can make my guinea pigs week for you guys.
Yay!
All right. I'm going to turn off my video so I can move closer to the pigs with my mic. I'll go get some food and we'll see.
This is like my favorite noise.
Piggies want parsley?
Thank you guys so much for listening to For Your Misinformation. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast, and if you like it, give us a rating and a review.
It helps us find more listeners, and the more of us there are, the better. And make sure you follow us on Instagram and Twitter at FYMI Pod.
Shout out to Ben Schlofelt for the audio production, Hope Dye for the podcast art, Kyle Dibdahl for the intro and outro music, and Adam Roston, who edits these videos every week so you can watch them on YouTube.
We come out with new episodes every Monday.